Hi everyone, welcome back to the Mom Rom-Com, the podcast where we talk about the beautifully messy parts of motherhood that rarely make it to the parenting books. I'm Gunjan, a working mom to a very opinionated 3-year-old. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that no two kids and no two moms are ever the same. But the emotional roller coaster, that's universal. Today's conversation is something that I've wanted to do since a very long time because it speaks to a quiet and nagging worry that sits in the back of a lot of moms' minds. Is my child hitting all the milestones? Am I missing something? Is it just a phase or something? Or even worse, am I overthinking? And to help us untangle it all from autism science to ADHD to screen time spiral or toddler mental health, I'm joined by someone whose work I deeply admire. Dr. Supriya Malik is a developmental psychologist with over 17 years of clinical experience across the UK and the India. She's also the founder CEO of Embrace, a digital-first mental health and developmental care platform that offers therapies and assessment for teens, young adults, and children. She's also the executive director of Indo-Canadian Autism Network, and recently she was awarded 40 under 40 by Business World for her contribution in healthcare. I can keep going on and on about her credentials, but what sets Dr. Supriya apart is her voice that's backed by kindness and a lot of scientific research. Welcome, Dr. Supriya. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Gunjan. Thank you for those kind words.
Supriya, before we dive into the heavy stuff, let's start at the beginning, your beginning, because I feel it's very powerful for the listeners to also understand the heart behind the work that you do. Embrace today has become a lifeline for so many parents. Where did this journey begin for you?
I have lots of stories, but I'll start with how it started. I was in the UK in 2015 when two families from India contacted me saying they wanted to fly their children to the UK to get them assessed by me. I thought that was really bizarre, and I still do think that families are actually having to travel the distance to get quality services. So it all started, I would say, then. That was my first push to come back to India and begin something of my own.
That's so interesting to hear. And Supriya, I'm actually very curious to know, what pulled you into the world of, psychology?
Psychology is a passion. I actually enjoy listening to people's stories. I'll be honest, I love understanding why people are saying or thinking the way they are. Everyone's so unique, and that just pulled me into psychology. I was always a great listener, and everyone would tell me that I would offer them comfort. But for me personally, psychology has been actually really helpful in healing because I went through my own challenges, and just interacting with people helped work through all of those as well. So it's an interesting relationship that I've had with psychology.
100%. I think, especially with my experience, postpartum, having a child, and now the whole process of moving countries. I think all of this takes like a toll on our mental health, and having to speak to somebody who's an expert in the field of psychology, it makes such a difference to our own mental health. So I think I'm so glad to see this change happening about in India, where people are doing such interesting work, people like you, and we have access to great mental health education and even assessment and so many therapies for our children. And this brings me to my question, Supriya. What made you want to start Embrace? Was this like a experience? Is there a story behind it? I'm very curious to know, how did it all start?
So I shared with you what happened in UK, and then when I moved back, this was 2017, I had been invited by NTPC for a guest lecture to address basically families, parents who had children who were on the spectrum, autism spectrum. And I went there talking about best practices, that are an international standards. And I still remember that there was this one gentleman who, after my talk, stood up. He was wearing a green and white shirt, and he stood up and asked me, when am I bringing all these things to Ranchi?
Oh, that's so
and
good to hear.
I said, give me 10 years, I'll be in Ranchi. I still have 2 years to go. So our real aim is to be able to reach that, population and be able to really have that impact.
That's actually very nice to hear, and considering you've also spent a great amount of time overseas, and now you're in India, and I've also from my experience, I've seen how much access, like a quick access to all these things that we have in abroad versus in India. So do you think we have a big change coming in from right from parents to medical health practitioners? Are they all open to the idea of exploring mental health awareness for young kids, children and teens?
I do think that change has been, there is steady change. When I think of when I first was practicing here, which was 2008, since then to now, we are seeing that parents are coming forward far more, and they're recognizing that their children need help. We weren't seeing as many teenagers coming in at that time. We're seeing a lot of teenagers now coming in and asking for support. So of course awareness has helped, but this is only in the cities. There are challenges that as we go into tier 2 cities, and as we go into the towns, the challenges still remain, and that's what we really have to work hard towards now.
And Supriya, what kind of families and what kind of issues does Embrace cater to? What sort of support do you offer?
So we are, my idea was, Gunjan, to be able to create a one-stop solution, for families over here. Because that, I also realized, along with quality being a challenge, services were all scattered all over. Families would go to one place for an assessment, and then they would be going another place for therapy and for speech therapy somewhere else. So it was just, families get really, really bogged down with traveling and finding the right resources. So at Embrace, we've really tried hard to have everything from NICU support now in the hospital to going into early identification and early screenings. So we have an infant program, and we do toddler programs for early intervention. We have all kinds of therapy services like occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, behavior therapy, child and adolescent therapists. We also then have extended it into a lifespan care model, because we were realizing that care doesn't end at 18. Those people are growing older. So we also work with young adults and provide mental health services for young adults. We have a psychiatry team, and we do offer support to now even adults who have mental health challenges, like you've mentioned postpartum issues, but we also work with OCDs, depression, anxiety, the entire gamut of mental health challenges. So if you ask me, we start with babies, like preterm babies, and go all the way to 65 years, and that's a journey that I'm really, really happy about, that we're being able to do that.
Yeah, that's actually very nice to hear that there's so much. There's actually one place where you can just go to with anything related to your child's, whether it's a mental health or any red flags that you notice in their developmental milestones that you often happen to overlook. So a very fresh welcome change to see Embrace doing such great work.
Thank you.
So that brings me to my next segment. Supriya, one of the hardest parts about being a first-time mom is that you don't know which symptoms are normal and which symptoms are worth flagging. So, I've been in the same boat myself. I've Googled symptoms at 2 a.m. and, just ignored them few minutes later. So, for all the new moms tuning in, what are the developmental signs in the first 2 to 3 years that, that are something that we should be wary of, or what are the red flags that we should be careful about?
Yeah. I completely understand, the anxiety that new mothers would face. I don't think it's only about new mothers. Generally, mothers are anxious about their child's well-being, right? But yes, there are definitely some important cues or developmental, I would say, misses that would happen, which would, which we consider as red flags. So one of the things that you need to watch out for is, how is the child responding to their name? are they responding or not? Of course, when they're playing, they are going to be preoccupied, and not everyone will respond immediately, but it shouldn't be a consistent pattern that every time you're calling them, they're taking too long to respond, and some of them will not respond at all. So that will be an important one. Some children don't smile back at you. So you've smiled at them and you don't get a smile back. That's another red flag that we will see in very early childhood. Another one is, of course, eye contact. A lot of people talk about it. I do want to mention over here that the word eye contact is a bit misleading for everyone. It's not really about looking at the person constantly, but it's about the gaze shift that we are really looking at. So how are they engaging with you? Are they being able to go from looking at their toy to looking up at the parent and then sharing and showing so that eye gaze shifting is really important, which we call eye contact for the layman. Then, of course, as the child is growing, we want to see them being able to speak. So, speech delays can be a big sign for us, whether they're being able to use their single words. Are they actually going on to developing phrase speech? You'll see, interestingly, that there are children who will start picking up small words when they're hearing nursery rhymes, and a lot of families will come and say that he's, singing the nursery rhyme, but he's not saying a word to me, and that is a red flag for us, because we want the child to be able to use words in daily conversation. It's not just a song that they've picked up that will be considered speech and speech as such or language as such. So the last one, that is also important, really, and often overlooked, Gunjan, is gestures. Babies start pointing very soon. Like by 9 months, you will see children pointing at things and showing things to parents that they like. And then that evolves into them also understanding other gestures, like nodding their head, how you and I are using our hands. They'll be saying, oh, big or small. So all kinds of things that are being expressed not just by language, but also by using our hands and gestures. And a lot of children we see don't do that. They don't understand how to use gestures. So those could be the common red flags, I would say, that we want to watch out for.
So, Supriya, now that, we're talking about this, if, God forbid, a parent notices 2 or 3 signs, the red flags that you mentioned, like, not doing eye contact, no gestures, or, not smiling back. So, what should be the first step of that parent?
So I think, parents know their children the best. I've always maintained that. If deep down, you are having a nagging thought that something is not right, that's when you need to come up and start speaking to your pediatricians, because the pediatrician is going to be your first point of contact, right? You are meeting them for vaccination, you're meeting them for any sort of challenges that the child is facing. So please do bring up that, I have been noticing that he or she is not doing X. Do you think this requires some sort of additional investigation, evaluation, etc.? So I do think that, but it's a very scary thing, Gunjan, to be honest, because just accepting that there's something not quite right going on with my child is it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage, to be able to accept that, even to ourselves. It's not really about accepting it to others. It's that acceptance to ourselves that, I need to go ahead and say this out loud, that something is not quite right. So that, of course, is a journey anyways the parent, goes through. But I really encourage parents that listen to that voice, inside you.
I think, that's pretty heartbreaking to actually imagine, a parent going through something like this. Yeah. And, so that actually brings me to my next question. It's very heartbreaking to hear that, there's something wrong with your child. So, in such cases, how does a parent emotionally, hold that moment when they get to know that their child is neurodivergent?
Yeah, it is. It's extremely difficult. Parents, we need, as professionals, we need to be able to provide support. Gunjan, that's the first thing, because for a parent to hear any sort of this diagnosis like autism or ADHD or dyslexia, even, it's a very it kind of shakes your world, and that is a very difficult process to come to realization and then acceptance and then being able to offer understanding. It's a journey, like I had mentioned earlier also, and we've had parents who have struggled with it. We've had parents who've the child or the young adult now is 18 and they've still not been able to accept some of those challenges. It's also, difficult to understand sometimes the emotional difficulties that the child is going through, because it's such a shift for the parent. There are, at so many different junctures, parents have to really work through, is this typical, like, is this what a child is supposed to do, or is this coming from now the neurodivergence that the child is showing? And that is a very difficult process that parents have to go through. But I mean, it's really up to us as professionals, according to me. I really think that we can be a very big support and real pillars for the parents and the families. And we've done that, at Embrace. That's what we do, where after diagnosis, because diagnosis is not a easy job and it's not easy for the parents to hear this. We will sit through a psychoeducation session. What we mean is we'll sit through a session where after the diagnostic process has happened, there'll be a long 1 hour meeting with the parents to discuss what this diagnosis is about. What does it even mean to have this? What does future look like? Because actually the questions that parents have is that, what's going to happen to my child's future? And that's the biggest worry. What will happen? So the common questions that I will hear is, what's going to happen to my child's future? Will he be able to hold a job? Will he get married or not? What will happen to them when I am not around? When I die, when I pass on, what will happen to them? And these are really scary thoughts for parents to go through alone.
True. So I think one of the things that Supriya, I've noticed, because Ayan, in my case, he was born in Canada, and he's majorly, he was there for the first 2 years of his life. But ever since we've moved back to India, I notice a lot of noise from around me that all kids develop at their own pace, and I've been told that okay, boys talk late, girls are quick talkers, boys walk late, girls are sharper, girls are smarter. So in this case, while there's so much noise from people around, as young parents, are there any 3 pointers you would want us to keep in mind, that these 3 things are something that we should definitely not ignore? And if you notice something like this, our first thing to do should be to go to a pediatrician or consult a professional like you.
Yes. So the first thing is what I had said, response to name.
Okay.
Because that is something that you will see any child, even if they have prematurity and delays, and all of that, they will pick up. And that is something that is a big marker for us, So that's an important one. If the child is not walking by the age of 16 months because then it becomes late, that they're not walking. 16 maximum you can stretch to 18 months. I wouldn't nowadays, because I think we have so many facilities available that we can actually intervene very quickly and get the child to check their developmental paths very quickly. So that's the other one. And the third one would be, like I said, so you've already mentioned speech. Of course, speech delays should not be ignored, because although in India especially we have this whole thing about it's okay, they can start talking at 4 years of age also. There's so many of them. Father was a late talker, so it's okay if the child is not talking. Actually, the percentage of children who will go on to talking at a later age is so small. It's only 10%, if they're delayed, will actually convert into late talkers and then have typical development. So we don't want to miss out on children who are not talking on time. And the age typically would be that by 18 months, we want to see them using single words. Like simple words like baba, dada, mama, but these are relevant words, not just babbles. So they're not saying ba 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 ah, ah, ah. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying that they have words like dudu, simple things that they are being able to address.
I think Supriya, I want to shift gears to something that I'm seeing a lot around me. The rising cases of ADHD, in young teens and even in preschoolers. So, what is the whole thing like? Are the cases for ADHD on the rise? Or, are we diagnosing it better these days? What is the reason for, the spike in the cases and even the conversations around ADHD these days?
Yeah. I think both those reasons. So, to be honest, let me first clarify. I think it requires one clarification. We don't diagnose ADHD in preschoolers. Technically, we cannot diagnose ADHD till age 6. Until and unless the child is very severe, and it happens very rarely. Because in early childhood, we are expecting children to be balls of energy, and we are expecting them to not have a lot of attention span, right? So I don't know if you know this, Gunjan, but just a quick fact that children attention spans are added by 1 minute every year. So if the child is 2, we are expecting only 2 minutes of attention span. So it's not like we can measure ADHD at that age. Attention and impulsivity and things like that stabilize by age 6, because there's biology around it. The prefrontal cortex starts developing, etc. So we want to then diagnose post that. But you're right, we are diagnosing and we're picking it up far more. I do think it's because we have a better understanding of what ADHD is. There are so many people who were missed. You'll be surprised. I don't know if you're aware. I'm doing a lot of adult ADHD diagnosis also now. We have a lot of people who would contact us and say that my therapist in Chennai thinks that I have ADHD, and they would have been going for depression or anxiety or any other mental health issues, and calling us to say that I do think that my ADHD was missed in childhood, and do you think you can do the diagnosis now? So I do think that we have a better understanding. Having said that, the environment is also changing. The context that we're living in, the world that we're living in is of course changing. And if with all the technology that we're being exposed to, even we as adults, I mean, think about how much phone scrolling we are doing, and how much of attention spans we have now. So of course, there's a change because of the environment that is there around us, and we are picking it up more because of better understanding.
Supriya, actually, there's so much chatter around, happening around on, internet these days. So I have a question that, can screen exposure actually, mimic, ADHD symptoms?
So screen exposure, yes, in some people it can, with the attention bit and regulation bit. So I'll explain that. we see that children who are exposed to a lot of screen time are more restless. They struggle with focusing, and they can struggle with controlling their emotions. So they will have larger meltdowns and big emotions. It's also the case with adults, actually, Gunjan. We know that the increase in screen time, people, if you ask those corporate employees who are stuck to the screen and are going through lots of data, for example, day in and day out, anxieties are more in them. They are very restless in general. And there are studies that have shown that you take away screen time and all of that actually reduces. Mm-hmm. There's some very interesting studies that have come out which are saying that even 30 minutes of screen time away, when there's excessive screen use, you'll see a change in behavior but also change in brain activity. So we know screen time can have those difficulties. Having said that, screen time in toddlers can be very dangerous.
So Supriya, that brings me to the hottest question of this episode that's been, bogging me down as well, screen time. Yes, I'm a working mom, and, of course, there are a lot of working moms tuning in. So we do resort to, screen times if you're eating out or, as the last resort in some cases. So is there like a recommended screen time for toddlers that you would, suggest us?
Yes, of course. So children below 2, we recommend no screen time. So absolutely no screens to be given to children below 2. It can have a lot of challenge, like it can lead to a lot of difficulties for the child. For example, speech delays are very, very common. Communication, socialization issues, play, they don't know how to play. So we'll have a lot of behaviors that end up mimicking what we see as red flags for autism when child has been given a lot of exposure to screen. So this is for children below 2. But above 2 years, we know that we can, the guidelines right now are suggesting 20 to 30 minutes of screen time. And then as they're growing older, you can increase it. But to be honest, with children under 6, I try and tell parents, let's limit it as much as possible. Let's try and giving them other things to play with and occupy them in different ways, with books, for example, puzzles. There are so many things that one can do.
But Supriya, I've actually noticed a lot of parents, ever since I've moved to India, I've seen that here, there's a culture that, the child, if the parents are watching television and the child is obviously with the parents, the child is automatically exposed to so much screen time that we, unintentionally are giving it to them. So, if in worst case scenarios, there are kids who are, who are so much used to screen time, like in the morning they get up, they need their cartoons, otherwise they'll refuse breakfast. So in such cases, what should the parents do that if there is, 1 or 2 hours of screen time that, the children is so used to and it's very stubborn about it. So what should the parents do in such cases?
See, my answer for children under 2 has remained the same. I know that, there are lots of parents, actually, you'll be surprised how many come in and say that without the screen, they will not eat only. How do I feed them? Do you mean that I should not be feeding my child now? And I have to really sit with them and think through, is it actually to do with screen that is, that the food is associated? And if that is the case, then how do we actually remove that association for the child? Because it's quite dangerous, to be honest, Gunjan, from a developmental point of view, where children are stuck to screens and the association with food is now being formed with the screen. This is just a 2-year-old. What will happen, think, for a 15-year-old? We are going to lead to a lot of challenging behaviors, lots of difficulties that the parents will face. So what we usually do is a graded, removal of the screen. And I would usually suggest to the parents that, okay, if they are watching TV for an hour, for example, then can we reduce it down by 5 minutes? Can we reduce it down by 15 minutes? minutes and slowly, bringing it down. Sometimes that doesn't work with children. Sometimes parents find it very, very difficult to manage the emotions that, are going to come up, like lots of meltdowns and lots of crying and shouting, which is also fine, but then we have to work with the parents' anxiety. Because if you think about it, children are going to cry. Children are going to have...
That's the only reaction. They don't know how else to react.
Exactly. They're going to cry. They will shout. They will... And, that's what we have realized over time. And we have these discussions many times with the team, where they'll be like, ma'am, but why are they scared of the child crying?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, I know that is the anxiety with the parents that we have to work with. Because... it's okay for the child to cry. It's actually really important for children to cry and learn how to deal with that, disappointment.
Managing their emotions.
Exactly. It's important to manage their emotions, to learn that,
So Supriya, I want to share something like a personal observation that I noticed when, we did the whole transitioning countries with my son. So, my son was, I would say he was a late talker, he was not very, not very social also, I would say, initially. And it was just me, my husband and my son back in Canada. And, he started daycare also very early because I had to, start work. And but ever since we moved back to India when he was 2 years old, in the last 1 year I've noticed like a overdose of so much vocabulary. He's become a chatting chatterbox. He's become like a chatterbox. Like there's a total personality change in him. I think I personally feel it might be because we're living with the in-laws, we're living with so many people around. There's a lot more socialization, access to so many people, family, extended family. So do you think like the speech of a child, how much of a impact does surroundings make to it?
See, we don't have very good concrete research on this, but there are so many anecdotal instances of exactly what you've shared, that parents, it's a nuclear family. Parents have had not much time to spend with the child, and as soon as that child is taken away and put into a bigger environment where there's a lot more people, you'll see a change. And I think it's to do with the amount of socialization and play that happens, because at the end of the day, in early development, play is the mainstay. Children learn through play.
Yep.
Right? So, and when I'm saying learning, it's also communication, social skills. All of these things are coming up from play. And it's not play with other children. It's playing with adults that they start learning these skills.
Okay.
So that's why, that initial first year or 18 months, we encourage mothers to play with their child. We encourage mothers to talk to the child as much as you can, and that is where we've realized that possibly that when parents are not available, they have their own commitments and jobs, which is, of course, there are different circumstances that people have. It might lead to lesser interaction for children and for families. It happens for some of them. I don't think it happens for all of them, because Gunjan, there were interesting also observations that people had made where they saw that children who are coming from underprivileged backgrounds, where they're born and they're just there, parents are not available, they still do pick up social skills, right? They are picking up communication, they're picking up language. But it was also because community was easily available for them. Yeah. Other children are there and they're playing, or there's some other older kid who's instructing them and telling them. So of course community does help.
I think we've all been raised in joint families, and we're coming with so many kids in house, and my mom's first response to anything was that you had so many people around that we didn't realize when did you grow up, and we didn't have the time to to notice that there's something wrong with you, because there's so much, so much to learn from kids, family around. So, that also brings me to my, another question that I feel is very important for all moms to know, is that, why is, speech delay suddenly becoming so common these days? Like, it's not even funny. Like, I, with every new mom or working mom that I meet, I think 1 in 5 women, 1 in 5 moms, they actually complain about the fact that, my child is a late talker, he doesn't talk a lot, he's not very social. So what do you think are the, roots, 2 to 3 biggest reasons that are contributing this sudden shift these days?
So, rightly, as you said, Gunjan, there are lots of changes that we are seeing, especially after COVID. We are noticing a lot more children who are coming in with delayed speech, etc. One of the reasons, of course, is increased screen time, because inadvertently, parents are not realizing how much screen time is actually being given to the child. Having said that, also a lot of children are being left with nannies. And again, there is nothing wrong with it. There's nothing. Only thing is, it needs to be monitored, because we don't know how much screen time are the nannies giving the child. So it's a little bit of a complicated sort of situation that parents have to go through. The second one is, like we were talking about, lack of community. There's a lot more people who are getting into nuclear families, which is absolutely fine. I'm not saying that joint families are better or anything like that. No, that's not what I mean. I'm just saying that even if there are nuclear families, there has to be community interaction. There has to be larger interaction with friends, or neighbors, and children going out down to the parks, which has stopped really. We don't see a lot of children going down to play. In our times, you remember, we used to go down and play all the time.
That was our summer
that was
vacations,
exactly. So those are the changes that we're seeing in the society. And of course, with COVID, there's a lot more isolation that has set in. There's over-reliance on WhatsApp and FaceTime, and there's over-reliance on socialization that is happening through the technology mediums, but not socializing face-to-face. So somewhere it is trickling down, to our kids also.
I think you rightly pointed about nannies. I've raised my son for first 2 years, me and my husband, single-handedly. We did not have a babysitter. We did not have anybody flying from India for help, or we did not have a nanny or anything of that sort. And we were working. But here, I've noticed the culture in India is that, if there are 2 kids, the mom comes in with 2 kids and 2 separate nannies for each. So, I'm kind of not very, I'm not very a personal, in favor of this idea that, child has to be raised by a nanny while the mom, she can't really replace a mom. So where do you think, like, as a working mom, what sort of, what sort of line should she draw, where, what sort of, with a nanny coming in picture, the things have changed so much. So as a working mom, nannies, I agree, indispensable. But, how can we make sure that she doesn't, stop the child or, hinder their developmental pattern?
Yeah. It's a tricky one, Gunjan, because we don't have the kind of child support right now in India, like you were talking about in Canada. Your son went to daycare. We don't have very good daycare structures over here still, sadly. So of course then you over rely, I would say, on nannies and babysitters who are looking after children. I think even that, there's no monitoring, there's no regulation that is happening, so we don't know how much they also understand child development. And I think that's where parents need to probably step in and have very clear rules and do's and don'ts with their nannies about what's acceptable, what's not. I do think that the parents are the ones who need to decide what the child should be eating, how much screen time are they getting, all those things. Parents need to take maybe a bit more ownership of and responsibility of. Sometimes it's hard still. I'm a working mom, so I know my challenges, right? When I'm working and my son is at home and I have to navigate that, it's hard. But yes, I think a bit more responsibility on that end would probably, help us with children.
True.
Yeah.
And, Supriya, I think the whole word, developmental milestones, I just feel that's so overly abused, especially on internet. And, there's so much pressure on mom that, okay, your child should be meeting, there's every age, this thing comes with a developmental milestone. But I personally feel like 18 months and, 2 years is like a decent age for the mom to gauge that, okay, my child should be meeting these many milestones and not, pressurize herself into milestones every 3 months. So if you talk about 18 months and 2 years, like what can you list me down like key milestones that mom should make sure that my 18-month-old is meeting and my 2-year-old is meeting.
So for 18 months, the things that we want the child to be doing is, one, that they are walking. And when I say walking, walking independently. Of course, they can have wobbly walks and they might be falling and things like that, but they are able to balance themselves to walk. The other thing that children are doing is they're pointing. So they're bringing things to you and showing something that's exciting, or they're pointing to things that they are looking forward to. The other thing that we will see children start doing is that they will start engaging in back and forth play with you. So they are going to bring the ball and they'll try and roll it to you, and you want to see that sort of back and forth play and giggles and shared laughter and shared enjoyment. Finally, what we want to see is, like I said, regarding speech, we want to see some single words that the child has, because those are really important early markers. When it comes to 2-year-olds, we want them to be far more active with their gesture use. So you want to see a lot of byes and a lot of, yes, mama, and things like that. You'd be also seeing phrase speech. So they are starting to put 2 or 3 words together and starting to use some phrase speech. So like I said, yes, mama, or pani de do, come here, let's go. Simple, phrases that they are picking up. They are also far more interactive socially now. So they are bringing up things to interact with you, and that's a really, really important skill actually for a 2-year-old to show. With regards to motor milestones, they've now become steady in their walks, and they're starting to explore some wobbly running also. They'll also be comfortable walking up the stairs, holding someone's hand, for example, or holding the railing. They'll start doing a gentle up, walking up of the stairs. You'll also start seeing children at this age starting to try jumping off the floor. So these are some of the motor things that we would be looking for.
And Supriya, now since we're on the topic of milestones, when does something delayed become, when does some of these milestones, that's delayed, that actually need therapy?
So the red flags that I had mentioned at the beginning, all of those would need therapy. If they are coming in as a bunch altogether. So if you're seeing that the child is not responding to name, if you're seeing that the child is not smiling, you're seeing the child is not talking, you're seeing that the child is not interacting socially. So those are times when all of those things are coming together for the child. We want to say that we should be intervening. I'm a big proponent, to be honest, Gunjan, about for early intervention, because early intervention really changes the trajectory of development for children. And it's coming from research. Even in my PhD research, I had tried to understand whether all of these play-based therapies show any impact on brain. And now we have so many studies that are showing that early intervention therapies, early intervention support actually shows brain changes and can help that trajectory which was, going haywire and amiss. That's what it will help with, correcting or rectifying in that sense. I don't use the words that, but it just helps with
Yeah.
closing that gap. So we want to intervene as early as possible.
I think I actually, how you were talking about play, that, it's children learn a lot through play, especially with adults, their parents. And, I've been an advocate of Montessori style of, toys and
yeah.
Montessori style of, parenting actually, in a lot of cases that I try to incorporate on a daily basis. And, even with, things like toy rotation and no toys with, stimulating and flashy lights, that's something that's been a big no for me from, day one. Do you think like, these Montessori toys and, the open-ended toys where there's so much option of exploration and learning, and do you think they also contribute in, the developmental growth of the child in the initial years?
100%. We know that the Montessori way is actually really useful in child development. It builds all of the skills that you were saying, creativity. It builds logical thinking. It builds social skills, communication. So there are so many useful or use cases, I would say, for children when they're working with this equipment, toys. Having said that, we do know that children playing with toys alone per se is not going to give us the results that we want as compared to children playing with an adult, because it's the richness of that interaction is where all the learning is happening. Because for example, when they're playing with the adult, they're learning negotiation. Ki I don't want this, I want this. There's already those skills that are developing. You'll see them developing collaboration. How can I play together with someone? How do I show my disagreement and then agree to whatever they are asking for? So really small, nuanced skills that get developed in interactive play. Of course, the toys are important, and I do agree with you. The flashy toys and all of that. It's nice to give them at some point, to the child, but not all the time.
Supriya, what we don't talk about enough, is, toddler mental health. Tantrums are still looked upon as a discipline issue. But, what if it's something deeper, it's anxiety, it's inability to express, their emotions or their needs. So, where do you think, what are the reasons for so much of emotional dysregulation and so much more, mention, so much more conversation and chatter around toddler tantrums? Why is it so much? I feel it's a normal part of their development. Why is it like disregarded as such a bad thing?
Yeah, I agree with you. Tantrums are part of the development. Every child will go through that, right? And it's important. They need to go through it. They need to understand how to regulate. And if they are not dysregulated, they will not know how to regulate. So it's really important for them to have these tantrums. I'll quickly, share a very interesting story that came to me. Like it's a case, that I'd seen where the parents came and said that, we don't want the child to have any meltdowns, no tantrums.
Oh God.
And because they were trying to control that, he was getting all the screen time. So there was a lot of parent counseling that we had to do, but please understand that tantrums are part of development, right? Now, you touched upon an important aspect about mental health, because it is often overlooked. And yes, tantrums can be a sign of anxiety. Children don't have the words to express what they're feeling. And feelings are also very confusing at this age.
Yep.
Because they haven't actually been exposed to feelings as such. They don't know how to name them. There are no labels. They don't have the vocabulary to even say that I'm feeling jealous or I'm feeling irritated. I mean, they don't have that vocabulary. So the way they express all of these feelings is through their behavior.
Yep.
And behavior can vary from the tantrums or the meltdowns, like anger, crying, shouting, screaming, to pinching, throwing things, even subtler ones where we observe them becoming more fearful.
Yep.
A lot of children will be scared of entering spaces and will be very clingy to adults, and parents will come in saying, why is this person not leaving? Why is she not leaving me? She wants me everywhere. Also, these are part of the developmental, the emotional development, for the child. So you will see that at 18 months, all children will be banging outside the mother's door saying, open the door,
I've been there. Like, I've never, still date. I think my son is 3. I still can't go to the washroom
Exactly.
unannounced. So I always go to him that, Ayan, Mama is going to have a bath. Are you okay with it? I literally take permission from him that, can I go and have a bath? Will you not shout? I give him an activity and then I come back.
Exactly.
But, Supriya, that brings me to another question. Like, you're talking about emotional dysregulation in toddlers. Like, of course, these are all now that it's so glad to see somebody that, they're telling me that, okay, it's normal. We need to normalize more of this.
Yeah.
But of course, there are some signs that, they should be, concerning to us, and where we should get some medical intervention. So what are some signs of, emotional dysregulation in toddlers that we should, seek medical help, and, there should be some intervention for that?
Yes. So we know that children are by 18 months or 2 years, they are okay separate. Not 18 months so much, but by 2 years for sure, they are okay starting to separate from parents. You'll see a lot of parents talk about separation anxiety during school drop-offs and things like that, and that's also natural. That's also something that we see, but it gets resolved typically within a week, 10 days. Some children might take maximum to a month, to settle down and start separating. But if that is taking longer for the child, and you're seeing your child getting really, really, really upset, then those are signs of anxiety, and that needs to be addressed through by a child psychologist or through some intervention. So the second thing is going to be the tantrums. Like what I was saying, they're natural, and of course children will have those, but the intensity of it. So a lot of children will be crying and getting upset, but some of them, you'll see them crying for hours, shouting a lot of kicking, lot of punching, and if they start hitting themselves, or they're hitting the other person every time that they're having these kind of tantrums. So those become very intense, and they will need some intervention. The third is the frequency of the tantrums. I'm seeing that my child is going into a tantrum every hour. Every second hour they are going. So on a day-to-day basis, you're seeing a lot of them. So that's the third one. I'm going to mention a fourth one, which is very peculiar, but it happens for some children. They become quiet. So there are children who are over expressive, and they'll have all of these big emotions, but then there are also children who are talking, who are expressing, and then suddenly you'll see them becoming quiet. So those children should not be missed, because they actually do get missed.
Supriya, now that we're talking about, toddler mental health, and that's something that's not very spoken about, do you think that, whether it is mental health or tantrums or meltdowns, do you think routines and predictability, they have a role to play in this? Because, I've been a very strong advocate of having a very strict routine for my child, and I feel that as long as we're on the routine, he's amazing, but one day we miss the bedtime, he flips, like he's a snappy child, altogether. So do you think routines and, they play a role in, the toddler's mental health?
Yes, 100%. Routines are really important for children. It's not just toddlers, children in general do better with routines, because there's high predictability and there's structure. They themselves don't know how to structure themselves, so adults have to give that to them. So routines help. Yes, we will see that children who have not had their full length of sleep are going to be either more hyperactive, or they're going to be more cranky and irritable. So there are those things that one would see. But, sometimes I felt that routine, some parents, not all, but there are some parents who become really, really particular about the routines to a point that it starts impacting the child's flexibility. So, because that's also a really important skill that children have to start developing post age 2. We as adults have to showcase that flexibility for children to learn how to be flexible. So, some level of flexibility in routines and some level of adaptability is actually important for them to learn how to be that.
Supriya, actually, this is something that, I go through a lot. Like, of course, my son has meltdowns, and, there are situations where, of course, you do tend to lose your patience, and, you lose your ground. So, in that moment, I think there's so much guilt that comes in. So, as a parent, how do we regulate ourselves, when a child is having a meltdown or a tantrum?
Yeah, absolutely. So, actually, the challenge that happens with meltdowns or tantrums is that it throws us off. Because it's throwing us off, and I don't know how to manage this, it leads to shouting and screaming and all those things, right? And there's those disciplinary actions that we end up taking. So usually, what I would suggest to parents is, if the child is starting to get angry or upset or starting to cry, we need to recognize that that's starting, so I need to take a break. Because as soon as we recognize that, oh, it's starting, I take a break, because I need to first calm myself down. I need to get regulated. Once I'm regulated, I can regulate my child. So breaks are important. Pausing is really important. It's very difficult. I'm also a mom, like I shared with you, and there are times where I'll also lose my cool. Like there's no one who's perfect. But of course, to just have that awareness, that is actually enough, because we end up, once we are aware, we do react and respond differently.
But I think situations that, we lose it. Like, I am so guilty that, there are times when I've lost it during his tantrum. Though I try to be so much aware and mindful, then, I give him hugs. I tell him that, okay, let's name this feeling. Let's make you feel better. But, if a parent loses it, how can we repair that moment with our child?
I think, Gunjan, it's a fine balance. There are times where we do need to lose it also. Because every time we can't, I won't say we can't, but every time the gentle way of working doesn't help the children. Because they need to understand their boundaries. They need to understand, what's okay and what's not, right? And in those times, you will have to take a stern stance, right? And of course, it makes us feel all guilty afterwards, and all kinds of things. But that clarity of this is something that is a no-go for me, is really important for the child. And repair, when you've had a shout out and you've had those things, is just basically giving both the child and the parent a break, and then coming back together and seeing, just having a gentler conversation, lot of hugs, lots of physical touch, because children learn to regulate themselves through that physical touch and physical sense. That's, what the repair would look like, until and unless it's a 4-year-old, who's now becoming more verbal, understanding more, and then there's more conversation in the repair that would happen.
Yeah. Supriya, I think lovely chatting with you, and considering that I'm a working mom, you're a working mom, and there are so many working moms who watch us. And is there any parting note, any advice that you would give to a working mom who's juggling work? She's also juggling very demanding, opinionated toddler. One advice that you would give to them to make sure that their young child is emotionally resilient, and they have a smooth parenting in general, as a developmental psychologist. What would you advise?
You're doing your best, that's what I would say. I think there's too much pressure on moms, and we that will be another chat, Gunjan, maybe. So there's no advice as such. Listen to your heart, listen to what you want for yourself and your child. Maybe one last parting note would be that mothers need to start paying attention to themselves a little bit more than others, because we end up forgetting ourselves in the entire gamut of things that we are managing. So till the time we are not looking after ourselves, if we are not taking care of our mental health, our regulation, our physical health, we won't be able to support our children.
I think that's so true, and I think this is one of the reasons that I feel I started this podcast, because I wanted to meet so many moms who doing such fantastic work, and they need to be. I think world needs to know more about them. They need the level of appreciation that they're doing, that they don't often get, and even if they get, they're like, do I really deserve it? We really question the appreciation that we get. So I think this is just my little effort of telling so many moms like you who are doing such fantastic work. So even this conversation was grounding and so helpful for me in ways that I couldn't imagine. And if you're a parent who's worried about your child's milestones, speech, their focus, their attention, and so many more things, that then please don't hesitate to reach out to a professional, and trust your gut. And if you think that there's any red flag that that she's mentioned, or even if you feel something's wrong with your child, please don't hesitate in taking professional help. We have so many more we have so many more doctors who are talking about it, so much more awareness, and we have institutes like Embrace who are doing such fantastic work. So please get your child checked if you feel there's something wrong. And thank you, Dr. Supriya. It was a pleasure, absolute pleasure to have you here, and fantastic work that you're doing, and despite being a working mom, and so thankful that you could take some time out and join us.
Thank you so much, Gunjan. What a lovely chat we've had. Thank you.
And thank you again for helping us see our children more clearly, more kindly, and I was hoping that all that advice that you shared with the moms, it's helpful to anybody watching in and tuning in. And I'll see you again in the next episode. Until then, take care.